Hey everybody, welcome back to James Draws Everything. I am James, but you already knew that. And today we're continuing our Drawing Every Country in the World's Flag series. And we're going to go back into South Africa today. Not the country South Africa, but the southern part of Africa. And we're going to be doing Malawi. So Malawi is a former British colony in South Africa. And it was part of the colony of Rhodesia for a while. And as you know from my Zimbabwe video, I have talked about Rhodesia on this channel. And yeah, today is going to be a very special episode of James Draws Everything. All right, so do you remember you used to be watching your favorite sitcoms or whatever, back in the day, and they would whenever they would tackle like a serious topic, like I don't know, like gun violence or teen pregnancy or something like that, they would be like, this is a very somber special episode today, so viewer discretion is advised. And we're going to be doing that today about Malawi, because I actually don't hear very much about this country at all, even in some of the circles that I run with. As you know, I am a fan of Rhodesia and pre-decolonization Africa. And, you hear a lot of romanticization about, South Africa and Rhodesia pre-Zimbabwe, but you really never actually hear about this country, Malawi. So I think it deserves to be talked about, because it is a very interesting story. It's an interesting story as far as like what happens when you cross the international community and get on their bad side. But we'll get to that. I actually kind of like their flag too. I think their flag is pretty cool. And I'm kind of just doing that first as I babble here. James Draws Everything. James has a lot to say. James gets sidetracked too sometimes. All right. Where'd my ruler go? Oh, there it is. Yeah. So if you watched my video yesterday, you saw that I was at the Republic of Congo embassy, and so I did get my wallet back. They were actually very helpful, and I actually had to fix the flag too before they let me leave. If you remember my video yesterday, my marker bled. My red marker bled a little bit into that yellow. I should have known better, James. You do your yellows last, but they were understanding. And, I had to fix it though, so that I had to use some white out and fix that flag. So James, all right, we're Malawi. Yeah, stay on topic here. Malawi. The name comes from the Malawi people. They were a Bantu tribe that settled the area around 1400 AD. And this region of the world, this part of Africa, you don't really get this from, again, the international community or mainstream historians, but there's a lot of ethnic strife that existed, like kind of colonization, or when whites arrive. Hold on one second here. I just want to loop this around good. All right. Yeah, so there's really not like a native Malawi people, just because there was so much movement there. Like when Portuguese settlers arrive, and the British eventually, there really wasn't any established civilizations there, right? So you kind of heard this song and dance before, right? It's kind of a similar story is like Rhodesia in South Africa. So like the white Europeans actually established civilizations there, like because there was nobody else there. So all that other stuff is kind of just revisionism that comes later on. And yeah, so a lot of strife in like the 19th century, especially because there's a lot of conflict in South Africa, like what eventually becomes like South Africa proper today, like the actual nation state. A lot of displacement, and it's not just like Europeans versus Africans thing. A lot of that has to do with like the Boer Wars and stuff like that as well. So a lot of like neighboring tribes that are not really accustomed to that particular area of the southern part of Africa kind of end up here. And yeah, there's a lot of ethnic conflict. Again, this is all Africans versus Africans. It's not really like a white versus black race thing. And Islam, actually, that's how Islam comes to Malawi. Because of, kind of like all the migrations kind of happening within the continent at that particular period in time. And yeah, I got to do a little bit of detail here, so I'm just going to switch my markers. 1891, the British show up, and this kind of becomes part of the colony of Southern Rhodesia. It's got a bunch of these little sunbeams, so I gotta they kind of come to a point at the bottom. Yeah, and the British make it a very prosperous colony, again because Rhodesia was prosperous, and Malawi is kind of no different. Malawi becomes Nyasaland. Alright, so in 1891, so that's like kind of, it's not really like a nation state, but kind of like a protectorate of Great Britain, Nyasaland and Rhodesia. And then in 1964, they do achieve independence. And this is where things get interesting, because if you followed any of my African videos, which you better like, comment, and subscribe. If you followed a lot of my African videos, you know that stuff basically goes to hell, pretty much, like when all these countries achieve independence, because all their infrastructure projects collapse, their political institutions were not developed organically, but they're expected to kind of keep the same institutions without those people still in charge, to keep a check on things. And Malawi is different, because Malawi actually had a guy, Hastings Banda, that became a president, and I think this guy is worth studying. He's not really talked about too much anymore. He was schooled in like the British ways, so he was a devoted anti-communist, right? So remember the wars for African quote-unquote independence and decolonization was not usually a white versus black thing, right? It was a communist versus the Western world thing. And Hastings Banda was a virulent, anti-communist. All right, so let me just finish off the flag of Malawi. And yeah, so it's got three horizontal bands, right? Black, red, green, with a rising sun. The black represents the native people, the red, the blood, and the metal, the struggle for independence, and the green is the color of the nature and all that that exists within the climate there. And the rising sun represents the hope and freedom for the continent of Africa. So I'm going to give you a little bit of bonus content today. And again, special episode because I think this country is kind of neglected, but deserves to be studied. So Banda, he's not like like an Ian Smith or something of Rhodesia. Banda was, he was one of the few anti-communist black leaders of Africa in the post-colonial movement, and it's kind of debated when he was actually born. So most sources say that he was born around like 1898, and he was around for a very long time. So 1960 when Malawi achieves independence, he's already kind of old by that point, and he ends up staying in power until he's at least like 90 years old, or possibly even older, depending on what kind of birth records you believe. Birth records not really being a thing, in that part of the world, or almost any part of the world, right? I think, I try to trace my own ancestry, and I got as far back as like the 1890s, right? And I have like Italian, and European ancestry, but they just didn't really keep birth records back then, unless you were of nobility or like an important person. But getting sidetracked again, James. Back on track here. So hold on, give me 1 second here, so make sure I get his chin right. This guy's a very interesting leader. Very much like kind of like in the Singapore, like suffer no fools kind of style of leadership. And he was not a communist at all. He was very much an anti-communist. He was he studied in Scotland, actually, and he was part of like I don't know if it's like a Presbyterian, like some form of like Scottish church. So he was a Christian, and this guy was a doctor as well. So he was a very smart man that I think history probably is going to treat him unfairly, because he crossed. You know who he crossed, right? I say this all the time. He crossed the international community, right? Because of his dictatorship. But we'll get into that in a minute here. Again, his name is Hastings Banda. So, all right. So he was one of the few leaders that supported some of the pre-decolonial movements in Africa. And again, this is a very smart man. He was educated, in Western ways, and he was a pretty skilled politician as well. He got in a lot of trouble because he actually was friendly to Mozambique. If you remember Mozambique, I don't think we've done Mozambique yet on this channel, but Mozambique was Portuguese, right? And the Portuguese, they tried to hang on under decolonization a little bit longer than most. And so he supported them because, Mozambique neighbored Malawi. Nyasaland becomes Malawi under Hastings Banda. Malawi derives from the Maravi people, the ancestral people that live there. So he wasn't like totally divorced, from his African heritage. He was almost like a third way sort of politician. He wasn't completely friendly to like the Western powers and whatnot, because the Western powers were already like kind of throwing Africa to the wolves by that point, and the Soviets and whatnot. But you know, he was very respectful, you know, to a lot of his you know, his European like sort of heritage as far as like his education and the way he developed his political institutions and whatnot. But yeah, interesting guy. It's draw his chin here. Yeah, so again, he opposed communism. You know, he was kind of right in the middle of things there, you know, sort of neighboring South Africa and Rhodesia, you know, Malawi being part of British Rhodesia. He saw what happened when you kind of sold anti-colonialism under the guise of communism. You know, he saw what happened because he was there for it real time. And again, you know, we say on this channel, your political institutions are not just pieces of paper, right? Your constitutions, your governments, those are developed because of your culture, right? So certain cultures develop institutions that might work for them, but not others. And Africa, I think, was no different. And Hastings Banda, he understood that. So when they were trying to completely, you know, democratize Africa and pull out like European influence completely, he said that like Malawi people were children in politics, and because you know they basically were. They've never engaged in politics before, right? So if you give people that don't have any political experience or they don't understand the process, if you give them, you know, equal vote and all that stuff, they're basically just going to vote to enrich themselves. And that's basically what happened in most of the African countries. But Malawi actually hung on for a while. It became like, you know, basically one of the strongest countries in Africa as far as like infrastructure, you know, very, very, very low crime. And this is where he gets in trouble, right? He's called a dictator because he basically banned any form of indecency from Malawi, right? So you couldn't have long hair, right, if you were a dude, and you couldn't have a beard, which he might have a problem with me for that, but whatever. When in Rome, I get it, because you know he wanted to impose like a decorum on the place, and I can kind of respect that because. You know, once you start kind of allowing like this like libertarian like free for all for everything, you know, your society usually collapses. One of the quotes that he's kind of famous for is African leaders practice disunity while posing as liberators. Right, so obviously that was something that got him in hot water with like the MLK and the God, why am I blanking on his name from South Africa? Mandela. Yeah. So he was very supportive of apartheid South Africa, not for like racial reasons or anything, but more because you know he understood the reality of the situation, that you know this was a communist takeover, right? Communists always talk about, you know, liberation and freeing the people, like, which, you know, of course that does sound attractive. Like, I don't blame him for that, but he was a little bit smarter than that, and he knew what was really going on. And again, he was a very, very smart man, educated in he had some Scottish education. He was a member of you know, the Church of Scotland. I forget whether that was like a Presbyterian or whatever church. And he was in power for like 30 years, right? And Malawi, one of the better places to live in Africa, right? Post 1960, when the African countries achieve independence, most of them go to hell, like almost overnight. But Malawi stuck on. Again, he was almost He was almost like 90 years old. Again, it's disputed how old he actually was, but eventually the pressure from the international community got to him, and he did have to resign, and they had democratic elections in, I believe, 1994, and he was ousted from power. Again, quote-unquote democratic elections, but we know what that means. Alright, so let me just erase some of these pencil lines. Yeah, he formed a lot of schools and universities, right? He wanted to, he understood that you couldn't just jump from kind of like this primitive, like sort of like hunter-gatherer society to like fully like Western democratic politics like overnight. So he formed a lot of schools, and he told the natives, you have to speak Latin and Greek, like in school. Like you don't have to speak it, but like we're gonna teach you it, right? And like he kind of got away from like the tribal languages, and he really tried to modernize the country. And of course, again, that's something that'll get you in trouble with the international community. But yeah, he died. I think he was in his late 90s. After he was deposed, I believe he left the country. But yeah, he's an interesting guy to study. He supported the Vietnam War. I don't know how ideological that was. It probably was just to kind of gain him like Western favor, because again, he was an anti-communist. Like this was the kind of leader that in Cold War America we used to support back then. Again, he supported Portugal and Mozambique. He supported segregated South Africa, which really got him in trouble. But no crime, basically, whatsoever under Malawi, under his rule. And yeah, again, I think he's an interesting guy to study because you always hear about Rhodesia, South Africa, like when Africa actually worked, but you don't hear about Malawi too much, and I think it's worthy. It's worthy to study Malawi. So, yeah, that's Malawi. That's Hastings Banda. Interesting guy. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.